Welcome to the very first episode of Doon The Tunnel. I'm Sean, and we aim to bring you a wide selection of guests, characters, and the unsung heroes that you would find down the tunnel of world football. A special thanks to MacSorley's for welcoming us into their space to bring you this episode. MacSorley's are situated on Jamaica Street in Glasgow city centre and are in prime location for gig-goers heading to the Hydro or the O2 Academy. The kitchen is open from 12 to 9 every day and have a wide selection of food aimed for the music lover, with the menu separated into opening acts, main stage, headliners and groupies. You can catch free live music on the stage 6 days a week, Tuesday to Sunday, making it the perfect place to enjoy a pre-gig drink. MacSorley's, good food, good music, great vibes. And today our guest, he has a Scottish Cup winners medal, a runners-up medal, forced Liverpool to a replay having held them to a draw at Anfield in the FA Cup, made almost 500 career appearances playing for 10 clubs across Scotland and England. While still actively playing, he is now in the process of turning his career into coaching. Welcome, Gary Miller. Thank you very much for coming on. How's life treating you at the moment?
Well, thanks a lot for that lovely introduction. No, really good. Enjoying coaching, enjoying still playing. So, no, just looking forward to the next step and creating a career in the coaching world.
We'll touch on your early life to begin with. Born and raised in Glasgow?
Yep.
Whereabouts?
So I was born in the Yoker area. I think I was born in the Queen Mother as well. So, yeah, always born and raised in Glasgow, grew up there.
And when did you begin to get into football? Do you have any initial memories?
Probably like everybody, I just remember playing it on the street and playing with my big brothers and getting a kick about with everybody that lived local, you know what I mean, wherever there was a bit of grass or stuff like that, or red ash, gravel, you were out there playing and just running about with everybody that was in the scheme pretty much. So no, just always remember that. And then I think one of my first teams was maybe Golden Hill, which is a local sort of team near Dundalk. I think that was one of my first memories, was signing for a team like that at maybe like 8 or 9.
We are of the same age, and I feel like there's a very much a generational difference. I remember one of the goalposts for me was literally a tree trunk, and you'd put a jumper down for the other one, whereas I feel like I don't see many kids playing football out in the street or on any patch of grass now. Do you feel like that's relevant?
Yeah, it's really bad, to be honest. You know, there's loads of astro pitches everywhere that have replaced the grass that we used to play on, and they're all locked up or they're really expensive to rent, or you know, if the kids go on it they get kicked off. But the other part of that is some of the kids don't know how to control themselves when they're on the astro, and they rip it up, they burn it, they leave litter everywhere. So it's kind of annoying. You go to other countries, you go on holiday and there's football pitches everywhere, they're open and they're undamaged. So I can understand maybe both points, but you know, if you let the kids in and played, then it would probably be better.
Yeah. What team did you support growing up?
Grew up supporting Rangers.
Did you go to the games or how?
Yeah, I used to go to the games often. Used to go to the Champions League games. Remember games against beating Parma, drawn with Bayern Munich. Remember being at the games and stuff. So amazing growing up and having that sort of excitement to go to the games and keeping your enthusiasm for it.
Was that family influenced?
Probably, yeah. My family grew up being Rangers fans and that as well. I used to go with my big brother David. He used to take me to the games, so it was amazing. Like I said, some of the nights there are probably the best nights in Rangers Champions League history, and to have been at them and witnessed the atmosphere more than anything. I mean, I think now a lot of people talk about the atmospheres and you know, the singing and the response to goals and stuff. Back then it was like you'd go home and you couldn't hear. And your throat was sore and you were singing all game and you were doing whatever and jumping about with the goals, and it's, you know, it's good now, but I think back then it was crazy. Everybody didn't have their phones out to video stuff. Everybody was just on the edge of their seats watching, and
in the moment.
I think it was Tony Vidmar and Claudio Reyna scored, and that, like when the goals went in against such a team like that, it was insane.
It was really the golden generation of Scottish football. I mean, I'm a Celtic supporter. I was going to the Celtic games at the same time you were going to Ibrox.
Yeah.
In the Old Firm games, you never knew how it was going to turn out. Like, you never knew what the result was going to be, what kind of game you were going to get. You just knew you were going to get a cracking game of football and hoped that you were going to be on the right side of it.
I think back then the team that was doing better generally never won the Old Firms. You know, that's how it was so on edge. Like you say, it was up for anything that anybody could win. So, I mean, I had the lucky spell that Rangers were on top then, and then now it's totally switched about and Celtic are on top. So it's good for both sort of fans. But when I was growing up, everything was sort of pro for me and seeing a lot of winning and stuff like that. So it's how football goes, isn't it? The cycles.
Mm-hmm. So when did you start playing? You mentioned your first team. What age would that have been about?
I would think it would have been about 8 or 9.
Right.
Started as a striker.
And worked your way back.
Worked my way back.
Were you that bad up top? Or?
I was good up front. I had a good scoring record up until I was about 14, 15 maybe. Scored lots of goals. I was quite tall for a young age, hit 6 foot early, and I was really quick. So it made sense.
And the teenage years can often be difficult in terms of football, with schools, exams, education. How was it for you?
Probably a lot more stressful probably than I remember. You know, when you have to just keep churning out when you get older and you keep, you know, I don't want to say you've made it, but when you've signed your pro contract and that, there's a wee bit of stress off, but then you're looking towards the next contracts and it becomes more business job type, you know. But when you're young, it's just, I want to be a footballer, I want to do this, I want to do that. So it doesn't matter how much schoolwork you've got to do, how much exams, you know, to you that's such a big deal, whether that's the correct way or not. But when you're young, it's your sort of dream, you think, anyway, and you want to follow it. So I don't really remember. I mean, I'm sure there was loads of struggles. You come home after games and you're upset with how you played, or you wish you'd done more, or you're delighted, and I don't remember too much that it was struggling. I think I kind of enjoyed it.
In your first pro contract, that was Livingston, is that?
Yep,
right?
Livingston.
How did that move come about? Seems like it is a wee bit out the road from Glasgow.
I was training with Kilmarnock at the time with a view to sign, because I'd been at St Mirren Pro Youth before that, and we'd signed contracts and they'd been relegated, but they'd promised the youth teams that they would stay up in the Premier setup. So then when we came back, it turned out that they weren't, and they'd agreed that if they weren't, people could leave. So I left, and at the time I think I was training with Kilmarnock. I think I'd maybe trained for a week, and they had too many trialists because they were rebuilding. So they were playing against Livingston in a friendly. So I just said that like a few of us had turned up, and like, we'll just play for Livingston. So I think 3 years played for Livingston that day. I scored, played quite well, and then the 3 years ended up signing for Livingston that day. They signed us after the game, and it started for there. So yeah, I'd never really trained with them or that previous to stuff like that. I'd been at somebody else, and we managed to play a trialist game and
you
got
just
signed.
You wonder how that, like the butterfly effect kind of thing, if you
Exactly
played for Kilmarnock that day, how would things have panned out for you?
Exactly. Would I've only been a striker? Would I've maybe no pushed on as much as I have done? Stuff like that. So, you know, if they were playing a different team that day, and the team like, nah, we don't need any trialists. It just so happened that Livingston at that time, I think, were starting to build their own youth academy because they were doing really well with money. They were pushing up the leagues, and I think they were having a sort of rebuild as well. So I think they had a lot of trialists that night as well.
I'm assuming you had a lot of support from your family with travel. Was training in Livingston? And
training was in Livingston, yeah. My parents have committed a lot of their life to, probably travelled just as much as me, if not more, for my football career. You know, so I'm sitting on a bus, they're driving, and they're having to do all the miles. So now with it, their support, I doubt any of it would have been possible, which is similar for a lot of kids all over now, you know what I mean. But no, my parents took me everywhere. They made sure I was well fed, even though, you know, as a teenager now, you barely eat. You have a slice of toast or whatever, but my dad would always make sure I was eating porridge, toast, getting ready to go. Then you're away to training after school, then you're back, you're home at night, shattered and stuff like that. But these are the sacrifices that have to go on, I guess, at a young age to just try and have a chance. You know what I mean? That doesn't mean you're going to have a chance, but
You spoke about joining the new youth setup of Livingston. How was that set up for you?
I think it was brilliant. I really enjoyed my time there when I was in the youth team. We had loads of great characters. I think when I signed my pro contract there, pro youth I'd started to drive, but we used to travel through. There was 5 or 6s that would be up at Buchanan Street Station at 6:30, 7 in the morning, getting the X15 bus through to Livingston. Then you'd walk down so that you were there for about 9 o'clock, and your day would start, and then you'd get the bus back home about 3:30 if you were lucky. So you'd get back through here about 5. So it was long days, but the group of boys that I was with was brilliant, and that sort of kept you going, and you would pick each other up and slag each other. And
You going to drop any names?
But my youth team was very good. We had a really strong youth team. A couple of Glasgow boys was me, Robert Snodgrass, Graham Dorns. Scott Boyd. He was a sort of Whitburn boy. He started at Livingston. I ended up at Ross County with him as well. Martin Scott, same. We ended up at Ross County together. We were at Livingston together. So a lot of good players. I think I played a few times. I've played against goalkeeper Greg Fleming. He came through the youth system. I played against him in my career. So no, we had a really strong sort of youth team later on before we moved up to the pro. Lee Griffiths came in. Other players, Andy Halliday was in the youth team. He was a bit younger than me, but loads of these boys that came through in the same sort of situation, and like you say, a lot of them sort of Glasgow based or Edinburgh based, so all found ourselves meeting in the middle.
Livingston did win the League Cup in the 2003-04 season, and there was some relatively big names within that setup. Davy Hay was the manager.
Yep.
Alan Main in goals, Marvin Andrews, Stuart Lovell and David Fernandez, who ended up moving to Celtic. That's a few of them. Did you have any interactions with them whilst you were in the youth setup?
Yeah, we did. I always remember Stuart Lovell being a really good, helpful guy and talking away to the youngsters and winding us up and stuff. But the fact that he would talk and help you out, and then he became a member of the PFA. So when I did sign pro and stuff, he would come back round the clubs and always chatted away. He had this nickname Archie, but it was brilliant. I knew of him because my mum's family are from Edinburgh, and they're all Hibs fans, and he'd played for Hibs, so I knew of him before that. So I always had a good bit of rapport with Stuart. But we had other guys. We had Burton O'Brien, with David McNamee, great players. I ended up linking up with David McNamee again at Ross County. He came up for a while, but like you said, there was really good players in that team. I think I remember was it 2-0? 1-0?
The final?
Yeah.
I think it was 2, wasn't it?
It was 2, wasn't it? Because I remember they scored late on, because our youth manager was obviously there with the first team, and we were all there watching, and I remember he ran over at the end of the game and he shouted, like, I think we were back in on the Monday, and he was like, see, it's Tuesday, like joking
they get the day
when we
off.
got the day off.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest celebrations for that.
And you had to wait until 2005 to get your debut, and it was actually under Champions League winner and UEFA Cup finalist Paul Lambert. How was the experience of getting your debut, and how was Paul Lambert to work with?
It's surreal for me, you know, like you said, this guy's done a lot in football in general, and growing up I always had a liking for like the German football and whatever else. Back then it was like Football Italia and stuff was on TV, and then some German football, so I always remembered the sort of, like you said, he's won the Champions League. I remember going to Champions League games, so it was amazing for me, a bit surreal, you know, you were a bit in awe. And I don't want to say he was just a normal guy, but he was just there being the manager and walking about, so it was really good. It was him and his assistant Norrie McWhirter, who was a great guy. I'd worked with Norrie before when I was at St Mirren. He'd came in the odd time just when somebody for the first team or that comes in and takes a couple of sessions, so I knew of Norrie as well. And Norrie was really, really big on getting me involved and helping me come in. And I thought he was a great guy. His coaching stuff and that was brilliant, and he worked really well with Paul. So no, it was brilliant for me. He took me in. I think it was pre-season, he took me to Italy on the pre-season tour to a place, I think it's Il Chiocco it's called. It's away up in the mountains, and he was like, I want you to come, have you got a passport and stuff? So I had to like phone my parents panicking. I think I was about 17, and my passport was fine in that, so went home, packed a bag, and that was it. I was at the airport the next morning, and that was me, away I went, and I was in the first team for then.
Was that your first like abroad trip with football?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'd trained with the first team a few times, like we trained next to them, and I'd get shouted over, and you'd go in and train, play games, and you're like, I just tried to, when we were young, you go in, you sprint about, work as hard as you can, and if you can do something good, then that's a bonus, do you know what I mean? But you just got to go and work as hard, so to go on the camp with them, and I remember part of it was because it was at a higher altitude to help you get fitter because of the breathing and stuff. So I remember when we were training, you were like, can you breathe and try to get adjusted to it. But even then, like, some of the pros they had in the team then was brilliant for me.
Mentioning some of the pros, Stevie Woods was in goals, who's now the goalie coach at Celtic. James McPake, who's at Dunfermline, is the manager. Man United graduate Paul Tierney is amongst them as well. So and then you've mentioned Robert Snodgrass and Graham Dorrans. Paul Dalglish, who I feel has got the son of Kenny syndrome. Yep. How was Paul Dalglish to be around?
Really nice guy. Just like to have a laugh, like to talk and joke, but just, he probably had that aura about him because of who his dad was and stuff. But I remember he scored a few really good goals as well. I think it was Dunfermline away, possibly, scored a cracker. So, no, just a nice guy, like you said. James has done brilliant. He's went on and been a really good manager, had a good career as a player, had a couple of really bad injuries. But, no, done really well. I remember going to got a couple of tickets for James, and me and Graham went to watch him in the cup final. Didn't go too well for him then, but, he's achieved a lot and done brilliant, so really pleasing.
And you were with Derek Adams, who you've got quite a history with that we'll touch on later. But it was a difficult season for Livy, and they finished bottom of the SPL with 18 points. You sat on the bench for half of that, obviously coming in as a new player. Did you find it difficult? Like, were you just itching to get on? Did you feel that you could make a difference considering the team were struggling? Or?
I don't know if I felt I could have made a difference. I think you're just happy to be there, and you don't really have an awareness of football, so you're on the bench, you're delighted to be there, you want to go on and play, but the atmosphere's maybe not the best because of what's happening, so you don't really understand that. But just to get on and get any time was brilliant, and I think by the end of the season it was it Richard Gough and Archie Knox that were the managers then?
Richard Gough was before
Paul
Lambert? Just before Paul Lambert.
And because I remember he took me in to train with the first team and that to start with, but he felt I was too young to get involved because of the difficulties in the sort of relegation situation that we were in. I think I was 17 then, and then obviously when Lambert came in, I'd been involved a wee bit. He took me in, and then I was fully integrated in and got some game time. So, no, it was brilliant to get on and even have spells on the bench and that at that age. And I think that back then that was really young to be getting involved. You've got like 16-year-olds coming on and whatever else, but back then that was a big deal.
Yeah. And then for the start of the next season you got a loan move to Ayr United. How was that move for you?
Brilliant. I went and scored on my debut. I think we played Forfar away, and I scored for the edge of the box. I think I was edge of the box for corners, took a touch and rifled it in the top corner, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. And I don't know if I scored too many after that, but no, it was really good. Again, I was young. I think I was probably 6 foot, wee skinny thing, just really quick, quite determined, worked hard, did the best I could. So I went there. I think I played till January, then I came back to Livingston. So no, I really enjoyed my time there. It was a bit of an eye opener for some of the, I think it was part time, and you're in with guys that you're learning about the game, and it's really important to go in there and just make sure that you're trying your best, because these guys are in there trying, although they're only part time. It's just you've got to learn. You can't go and half-ass it, really. Yeah,
and being from like pro youth contract to playing it part time, is the first team experience must be invaluable. That must have been the absolute end goal for you.
There's nothing that can prepare you for that. As good as our 19s team was, you know, like James, stuff like that. He was obviously older, so when we came in at the start, he was there, but he was breaking into the first team. He was a striker then as well, Big James. So stuff like that, you can't really recreate that. We used to have the reserve league, which was probably just as close as you could get. But when you're in that first team environment, you know, everything's like the skill gap as such is really small. Like everybody's quick, everybody's strong, everybody's got a good touch. So you have to kind of be on it and willing to just work as hard as you. I remember a couple of pros would say to me, you know, doesn't matter if you do brilliant or no, but you need to, the manager needs to see you sprinting about, running about, trying as hard. If he sees that you're not being, you know, putting in the effort, then it probably won't bring you back in.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, you did return to Livy in January, and you featured near enough pretty much for the rest of the season. Did you feel like that was you getting your foot in the team at that point then, having had a pretty successful one spell?
Yeah, I think so. I went away on loan, played quite a lot of games, and came back. I think John Robertson was the manager by
That's
then.
right, yeah.
And Robbo really liked me. I think he made the move to put me back to right back. And liked what he seen. I was quite quick. I could dribble a bit up and down the line, non-stop. Probably before the wing back became an actual thing. So it was, I think, the most we'd ever seen somebody do that was obviously Cafu. Was the Brazilian.
Is that who you're comparing yourself to?
Definitely not.
Are you comparing yourself
Definitely not, but that's what everybody says when you're a flying full back then. He sort of created that on his own, didn't he? But it was...
the Joker Cafu does have a ring to it though.
Definitely does not. Yeah, he was brilliant. I just tried my best. But, you know, John Robertson seen something. He liked my effort. He liked what I could maybe add to the team. Like, I think when I first broke in, I played the first few games at left back, and then eventually got my chance over at right back.
Then at the start of the following season, you made a loan move to Ross County up in Dingwall. How did that move come about, and how was it moving so far north?
So we had a new manager come in the summer, English guy, and wanted to bring his own players, whatever. Obviously, when you're a youth player at your first team, I think you're kind of always looked at as a youth player. You know what I mean? You're not looked at as a first team player probably until you move, or unless you're
kind of
like
establish yourself somewhere
big thing,
else.
You know what I mean? So it's I think I was still looked at as a youth player. He wanted to bring his own people in, and Derek had moved to Ross County. He'd worked with me. Funnily enough, I think I'd been injured at the same time as the gaffer, and I had an ankle injury or something, so I couldn't drive, so I had to meet him in the morning and he had to pick me up. So as much as he probably disliked that, I mean, 18, 19-year-old getting into his car every day, we travelled together for a bit, got to know each other, and then he took me up to Ross County.
How was the living situation? Because it is out the road. Did you need to move up there for on a temporary basis?
Yep.
How was that?
Amazing. The club up there were amazing. They take you up. To start with, I was in a hotel, this big giant hotel. I think it's called the Ben Wyvis. Got your food every day, get everything else, go to training, come back. I obviously drove by then as well, so it was brilliant, a great experience for me. And then after about a month, they helped me find a flat. I got put up in a flat and stuff. So, you know, at that age, you're kind of living on your own for an experience for me. But one thing about that is the team was amazing, you know, because everybody was in the situation very similar. They'd moved away for their families, or some of the older players in the team, like their families were up there. So all the young boys would hang about together. You'd go and eat each other's houses and stuff like that. So it was a great growing up experience, as well as still being in about like all your pals, kind of.
So did you move up when Derek Adams was in charge, or was Dick Campbell still?
Dick Campbell was still in charge. George Adams was director of football, so I think I'd been recommended. Went up and then took a wee bit of time to break in under Dick Campbell. Then played once or twice, I think. Then Dick Campbell left, and then when Derek came in, that was it. I started to play a lot more.
If you get any Dick Campbell stories?
Again, I don't think I even knew what was happening back then. I was young and I just thought, wow, here's this big guy. What a character. You know what I mean? I was
He's
used to
notorious,
stuff like
isn't he?
that. So Jimmy, Martin Scott gets called Jimmy, and he used to do a sort of persona being Dick Campbell, and I remember he did it one day and Dick Campbell was in the toilet and could hear Jimmy, and when Jimmy had finished doing his act, you just heard Dick Campbell laughing, and I think Jimmy crapped himself, but he took it in great spirits, and I just remember some of his shouts and that. He's a bit, he's a character. He's just really out there, and
He's like a meme.
plays it off. I don't want to say plays it off the cuff as in he does, but he says what he feels and he acts how he wants to act, and that's a brilliant thing. And I think his teams replicate that.
When you've got a Twitter page that's dedicated to you, then you know that you're notorious in terms of a character. But you thoroughly enjoyed your time at Ross County.
Yeah.
You moved back to Livingston from your loan. How was that spell, having been a successful time at Ross County,
Yep.
to going back to your parent club?
I think I still had another year on my contract, and obviously done really well at Ross County. Won the first division, I think. So was delighted with that. For me to have an achievement like that at such a young age and to have played a big part in that. Then I moved back, and I think that's when we had the Italian owners at Livingston, was it?
Yeah.
So again, another totally crazy season. I think pre-season we went to the Ramada Hotel in Livingston, and they wanted us to stay there for like 20 to 30 days, like with it going home and stuff. And boys lived like 20 minutes away, half an hour away, and they were trying to keep us there for a training camp. It was quite surreal and strange. So yeah, it was a peculiar season.
What was the contrast of being part of Livingston, who were relegated, to being part of a Ross County side who had won the division and were being promoted?
I think I felt more part of it. You know, I was kind of just a young guy coming through, trying to get involved. Whereas at Ross County, you're part of it. You're playing the games. It means a lot more. You know, if you win or you lose, part of that's on you because you're part of the team and stuff like that. So it was you're more involved. It's more emotional to you. It's more more context for you playing and being involved. I think you just get your first real sight at what being a footballer is.
Yeah. And then you made the permanent move back up to Ross County. I take it that was an easy decision given the experiences that you had previously.
Yeah, and I think I played a few games against Ross County in that season. I moved back and I done pretty well, and they'd contacted me again and they're like, do you want to come back up? And I was like, yeah, totally. And I think I signed a pre-contract pretty early doors, and then that was it, ready to go.
You made 44 appearances in the 09-10 season, finishing 5th in the Championship as it's now known. But the real talking point of that season would be the Scottish Cup run.
Yep.
Defeating Berwick Rangers 5-1, Inverurie Locos 4-0, Stirling Albion suffered their worst ever defeat to Ross County that season, which was 9-0.
I think I scored in that game.
So there you go, part of history.
Possibly.
And then that led up to a quarter-final against Hibs at
Yep.
Easter Road. How was that leading up to the quarter-final? Did you feel that you had a chance?
Amazing. It was all my relatives were Hibs fans, so they were all there in the Hibs end, and I knew we had a good team. We had a great bond together. We had a great spirit, and we were doing well that season. So it was, you know, we weren't afraid of them, and Derek, the manager, really instilled that in us, not to have a sort of fear of other teams as long as we did what we could do. So, you know, we had some really good players in that team as well. You know, you got Paul Lawson, Richie Britton, Scott Boyd, Alex Keddy, you know, big players like that. Scotty Morrison at left back, Stevie Craig, Stuart Kettlewell was involved in that team, Andy Barrowman up front, Michael Gardine, players like that. So it was amazing. We had a great goal. I think Mike McGovern was our goalie, like really top players that had a good chance, you know, and we were all integrating together. So I think we went to Easter Road with the view that we were going to win. And
Hibs did put out a strong team as well. Colin Nish, David Witherspoon, Liam Miller, John Rankin, Derek Riordan, Anthony Stokes. They were out to win that night as well. But the game finished 2 each, taking them back to a replay.
Yep.
you must have felt confident going back up the road with that in
Brilliant.
mind.
I think did we take the lead? I think we took the lead, and then they went back to 2-1, and then we scored again late on, and then I think last sort of 5 minutes we were really pushing and had a few chances, and when we got in the changing room and that after that game, you know, I think we were a bit disappointed, which speaks volumes for us. Like, we were kind of like, we'll get them at home, we'll beat them at home, you know, and we had that attitude, and we did. I think it was a Tuesday night, you know, you're playing evening games, brilliant, floodlights and that are on. I think Big Scott Boyd scored in the last minute header. And, you know, for a lot of young guys like us, I mean, we're only 20 at the time, some of us, and that was quite young to be in first teams at that time as well. So to all be in it together, and like you said, Stokes was there. They had a really strong team, and Hibs would have been expected to do well and be pushing to get to finals.
Yeah.
So for us to sort of draw with them away and then beat them at home, and deservedly beat them, was amazing for us. And it's some of the nights are the nights that you remember forever, for the atmosphere after it in the changing room, and also, you know, I remember watching, I think it was Edge of the Box or something, and you're like, oh, Boyd, he's up, oh, he's put that in, and then just pandemonium, you know, and the jail end behind the goals. I think at the time it was terracing, and there was just like people jumping, going crazy in there because it wasn't seated obviously, and just brilliant.
That set up for a semi-final against Celtic.
Yep.
What was the mood leading up to that, having knocked out a Premiership side already?
Same again, you know, we went into that with no illusions, we were going in to win. The manager, Derek's got a real sort of underdog part in him where, you know, he wants to show you, prove people wrong, and he wanted to instill that in us, which he did do. We had a few players that had been at Celtic as youths as well, Michael Gardine, Paul Lawson and that, Mick McGovern, who probably wanted to show that they were good players, and they did that on that day for sure, you know. So it's something that you always hope for, like a big game like that. And Celtic that day, I think Neil Lennon was in charge as well.
That was his third game after Tony Mowbray's sacking.
Yep.
So it was a struggling season for
Yep.
Celtic. That must have had a huge impact on you, thinking they were there.
They
for
made
the
a
title.
sub first half. They subbed somebody, one of their centre mids, I think, first half. So, you know, that was a big thing for us. You know, Celtic
Are feeling they need
don't
to
really,
make the changes
yeah, exactly.
here.
They don't really make subs in the first half. Usually they're on top. So, I think we just applied a lot of pressure to them that day. We never really gave them a minute. I think I was up against McGeady and Samaras that day, and what a big challenge for me. But
Are they still in your back
to
pocket?
do really well. I don't know about that, but these guys had all sorts of tricks, left foot, right foot. So,
And I think that, I mean, Celtic, that was a notoriously bad season for them with Tony Mowbray getting the sack. But people forget the quality of players that were still in that squad.
yeah,
Andy Hinkle, who was a German international at the point.
I think Robbie Keane was up front.
Robbie Keane was up front. Scott Brown was there. Aidan McGeady, as you mentioned. Like, they did have the quality players there. So to win 2-0, and it was well deserved. It wasn't even a, like, oh, we get the rub of the green with that one. It was a thoroughly well deserved victory.
Yeah.
You must have took that elation. Like, how was it in the changing room after that?
I just remember the game, but before it was hyped up. You know, I was quite a tough competitor with a player, Michael Gardine, who was quite feisty, and I remember him coming up to me before the game, and he's like, he'd played with McGeady, and he's like, if he does this touch, it means he's going the opposite direction, and if he touches it this way, it means he's going that direction. And it was something strange, like, if he touches it with the inside he's right, he's going to flip-flap it to the opposite way, and something daft like that. So it was like before the game, so it stuck in my head. But I actually did quite well against them that day. I always did not too bad against players because I was quick. You know, I could get back in, or I could cover, or if they were fast, I could match up with that. So did quite good that day. Second half was against Samaras, who was really quick as well, and managed to do well against him. Got a few blocks, but then after the game, I think we were like partying on the pitch, and you know, I think that was such a big event for us and the fans that it's quite surreal. And it's just, I don't think you took it in at the time how big a event that was for Ross County at the time. Obviously they've much improved that now, but back then that was like a big thing. So just the atmosphere was amazing. I think even the manager was a wee bit elated, where he was just like, he was obviously delighted because that was his plan the whole time, but when it goes as well as what it did that day, there's just a bit of surrealness where you're like, wow, that was a really good win.
Stephen Craig scored a superb solo goal as well, a dink over the defender and put it in, and then Martin Scott, who is now at Gallifreydine Rovers as well. So you've
Stevie's his assistant.
So you've crossed paths with them later on in your career as well. But talking of that Ross County game, it's became quite famous, probably for the wrong reason in terms of Celtic, when there was an interview outside the game and it was Kieran Tierney's dad,
right.
And he points and goes, "This is the future of the club here, know that," right in there. And he's pointing to Kieran Tierney.
Yep.
So
he wasn't wrong, was he?
I know. So people talk about, like, people kind of forget the Ross County side of it and focus on the Celtic side of it, and I feel like that's always going to be the case.
You've got to remember, we'd only been a championship team for a year or two at that stage. So for us, against one of the top teams, that was a magnificent result. But our management staff, with Derek Adswood, Craig Brewster as well, great guy, really good coach, and he'd instilled a lot of toughness. He'd scored in a final, he'd won it, you know. So for him passing on information to us, and just to have this real freedom and belief in yourself to go out, and it's no matter who you're up against, and I think we had that about us that season.
And you came up against Brewster's former club in Dundee United. How is it walking out onto the Hampden pitch in a Scottish Cup final? Because not many players, never mind people, get to experience something like that.
That was probably one of the best but worst days. Like the actual, you go out, the music's before it is on. We weren't pre-warned, but there was like big flamethrowers and stuff lined up behind us, fireworks going off, and then in the game there was 60,000 odd there. Couldn't hear a thing. I played right back, Scott Boyd was right centre back. I was looking at him, I could see him shouting at me, could not hear a word that he was saying. It was just, the noise was just non-stop. So you have to factor that in, that you can't really hear the information that's getting past each other. So you have to be more aware, you have to be more alert. You're turning round. I was up against, I think I got booked early on for a tackle on David Goodwillie, which was a shocking tackle. I've seen it back, probably lucky it was now red. You know, so you're trying to analyse, take all that in, and you've got one of the hottest Scottish prospects coming through, and you turn around and he's sprinting at you with the ball and stuff. So try to take all that in and enjoy the game as well. As you know, they had a great team as well. They were flying that season. A lot of good players, good strikers. So probably a really difficult game for us, but they were well prepared. I think obviously when we beat Celtic, they'd had us well watched. They knew what our strengths were. They totally combated that, and they had the quality to push above that.
At half time it was 0-0. You must have still had that element of belief, having obviously the previous results against Hibs and Celtic.
We still had the belief, but I think we had they might have had a wee break, or it was the other way about. We'd had their season had finished 2 weeks before or something. Not an excuse at all. They were a much better team on the day, but it was they had all the answers to the questions that we were asking on that day. You know, wherever we'd tried to use our strengths, they combated it, and then they maybe countered us. I think the first goal they score, the kind of counter attack, and then once they've scored the first, we have to kind of come out and try and play, and then it was more difficult for us on that day.
The game did end 3-0 to Dundee United. How is it going back to the dressing room with a runners-up medal?
It's devastating in the sense we were fine, but then see when you walked into the corner and you're not going to celebrate, but you're going to appreciate the fans, and you see your own family. I remember seeing my parents and I got upset, and it was more so for them, you know what I mean, because we got so far, but they were just delighted that you were doing well, and they wanted you to do whatever you could, and they were happy that you were happy, and so they were delighted. They obviously gutted you never won, but they recognised, wow, this is a really good day for him, and he'll appreciate it in the future. So I remember seeing them and getting a bit upset. So it was afterwards where you're like, oh, God's sake. And I think, you know, my dad was like, don't worry, you know, there'll always be a next time.
And he was right. So the next season did see some changes in the managerial position as well. Derek Adams actually left to become the assistant at Hibs.
Yep.
How did the players view that move? Because you don't often see the manager of a club moving to what would be the secondary position.
Yep. I think he probably thought he needed that move to step up to the next level, which obviously worked. You know, but we felt at the time he was probably good enough to be the manager of Hibs for what we'd known and what we'd learned, you know, so it was kind of, we felt a wee bit strange possibly, but we knew how well he'd done and he probably did deserve a crack, so for him that was the next step, and by all means he went there and learned and got the experience that he wanted from it.
You ended up working under several managers after Derek Adams had moved away. Craig Brewster took over as caretaker. Willie McStay came in, and then Jimmy Calderwood.
Yep.
How were the individuals working under? You've touched on Craig Brewster being influential.
Willie McStay was good, had great information. I think people kind of said about him after it, he was too much of a coach.
Right.
To take on the manager sort of role, but he'd been coaching all his life, and I think that was one of his first managerial roles. So, but no, Willie was really good. He had a lot of great tactical information, strategies and stuff. It just kind of, I think because Derek had left and went up the way, people expected him to come in with the Celtic background that he had and probably push us on, and obviously it's hard at that time to get your own stuff across and change, so no, it was a wee bit difficult.
And Jimmy Calderwood, how was he?
Brilliant. I loved Jimmy Calderwood. He was a great guy. He liked me, he played me, he said what he felt, you know, and at times, like I played right wing some games, he'd go, if we were losing 1-0 with 10-15 to go, he'd just go, right, 4-2-4,
Move up.
get up front, you know, or a 2-4-4, just two defenders at the back. I'd move to maybe right midfield, Richie Britton or whoever would move even further up, and we'd just go for it, you know. So for us that was like, wow, this is a bit crazy but totally understandable, you know. If you get beat 2-0 trying to get a drawback, then what, you know, you still lost the game anyway, you're losing 1-0 kind of method, but brilliant. I think we won the Challenge Cup under Jimmy.
Yep.
And it was, for me, a manager with that level, you know, he'd been at these clubs that he'd been at, he really liked me, and I just thought this was brilliant.
And you won the Challenge Cup at McDermott Park,
Yep.
where you would end up having a future there as well. But Derek Adams did return for the following season. Did you feel like that was needed, or would you have been happy working under Jimmy Calderwood, or what was it? What was the situation?
I really liked my time with Jimmy. I wish I probably could have had longer. I think he went to a Dutch team, and he phoned me about maybe going there like years later.
Oh, really?
And I was like, wow. But then he left quite shortly after that, so I don't think he's doing too well at the minute either, so it's a shame for him, but really great guy. Glad I came across him in my career. But like you said, Derek came back, and you know, you could tell that he'd learned, he'd watched, he'd sort of became even more of his own man and understood what he wanted to do and take further forward, which was probably his whole learning experience for going there.
And you did win the championship that season with 79 points, and you were 24 points clear of the runners-up Dundee.
Yep.
And you lost only once during that
First
season.
game.
Like, so going on a 34-game unbeaten run is something pretty special, regardless of what division you're in. I think from the outside looking in, that just shows the quality and the unity within that team. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's pretty much bang on. I think we lost the first game, got beat 5-1 for Hamilton, went into the change room after, and I think we were arguing, shouting at each other and annoyed. And I can't remember I think Derek had a wee blast, but I think he could see that we were arguing amongst each other, so he knew he'd built something decent. And then I think we drew with Morton 0-0 in the next game, and then that was it. We just kicked on for there and never got beat again. And I think I played every minute, which was brilliant for me. So great confidence shown in me for from Derek and that, and like you said, we finished so far ahead, and just it was a real brilliant season. You know, it's a hard season to forget. I know they've went on and done a lot more, won stuff since, but for us that was such an achievement at the time.
So having been promoted to the Premiership with Ross County, you actually moved that season and
Yep.
went to St Johnstone, who
Yep.
were also in the Premiership. How did that move come about, and why? What was the decision behind it?
It was a really difficult decision to move. Like, I'd loved my time there. Obviously we'd won the championship, we'd done brilliant, they'd offered me a good deal. It was just something I thought, right, this is maybe another step up for me. And it was closer to home. I'd been away for 4 years, I think. You know, and you're only getting home sporadically. And I had a young son at the time as well, so to get closer to home, you know, I think I was an hour away travelling.
Mm-hmm.
So I could live at home again and whatever else. So that was probably the most decisive factor for me, other than, like, it wasn't just based, oh, this is a much better team, this and that. Obviously for me, St Johnstone at the time were in the Prem anyway, stuff like that, but most of it was down to family orientated stuff, so I had to make a personal choice for me and for my son, obviously.
Did it make it easier, given that it was now two Premiership clubs, Ross County and St Johnstone, so you're competing at the same level regardless? Did that make it a wee bit easier, like you're playing in the Premiership once again?
Yeah, I was, and obviously I was delighted with the achievements that I'd had at Ross County. You know, I was leaving them on a high and stuff like that. I think I was quite well liked there by the fans, stuff like that. I think I won one of the wee player of the years that season as well. So to be leaving at that moment was brilliant for me. I think a couple of other guys left as well, so they were going to need a rebuild because we'd had that team for 3 or 4 years as well. So it allowed them to create, and Derek to get his own people and stuff like that again. So it was mainly just about moving on now, and St Johnstone were in Europe. You know, I think it was a really successful move for me. I think 3 maybe out of the 4 years I was there or something, we finished in the top 4. We were in Europe each year, so brilliant for me.
And you were working with Tommy Wright, how was he?
So it was Steve Lomas to start with.
Right, okay.
He was manager.
Right.
He was brilliant. He would join in training. He had really good patter. He had a good sort of camaraderie about him. And again, we went on, I think it was maybe like a 7-8 game winning run there. Done really well. So no, there was lots of enjoyable factors.
You were now in a squad with the likes of Xander Clark, who he was up and coming at the
Yep.
time. Callum Davidson, Murray Davidson, Peter Pollitt, Craig Beattie, Nigel Hasselbank, Stevie May and Chris Kane were amongst some of the names there. How was it working with this new group of players for you?
Really good. I really enjoyed it. Like you said, for the start, you go in and you realise like that skill gap is now even smaller. You know, like you said, Nigel Hasselbank, he was small, but he was one of the strongest guys in the team. You know, if you got too tight to him, he'd throw you out the way and put the ball in the corner. He was brilliant at that stuff. So it was just recognising that you're at the next level. You know, and I was a flying fullback at the time. When I went there, I probably had to work a lot on my defending capabilities. Probably adjusted and became a bit more defensive. Instead, I did just sprinting up and down. You know, showing your energy and doing these long busting runs and getting forward all the time. Couldn't really do that at that level because a team would instantly go, right, every time he runs out there, just fire it into that gap behind. So I had quite a bit of learning to do in my sort of first season and adjusting to the position and stuff.
And as you said, St Johnstone were at the top end of the table. They qualified for Europe, and it was an away trip to Turkey against a team that I'm not even sure I know how to pronounce. But how was that trip for you?
Partly it was surreal. I think at the time that's when the whole Syria stuff was kicking off.
Right.
And it was near the border, so there was like a few fighter planes flying about above. So apart from that, I remember when we got there, it was quite a hostile atmosphere. I think it's called Eskişehir is the team. But I remember we walked up, the tunnel came out the ground next to the pitch, and we walked up and the fans were there like 2 hours before the game. And we were like, wow, it's like, it was almost full. And they were singing and chanting, and then we came up and they started to whistle and boo at us. And I don't know if Steve Lomas, the manager, had experienced something like that before, but he marched out onto the halfway line and just started clapping, put his hand above his head. That atmosphere totally changed. They just started applauding. They just went back to singing their own songs, relaxed again, and it was like as if he had to show them that wee bit of respect. And then it totally changed. I think the club's built a good relationship after that and became. So I think we changed their away strip a season or two later to be similar to one of theirs, and they created this bond. But I remember when we walked up, we were getting booed, and then he did that, and that was it. Totally changed the atmosphere.
It was a 2-0 defeat in Turkey and then a 1-1 draw at McDermott, meaning that you were out the Europa League with a 3-1 aggregate defeat. But St Johnstone finished third in the Premiership that season with 56 points, and it was draws that were the detriment to that season, as you had lost. You had only lost 3 more games than what Celtic had done that season, but it was the draws that were taking away the points for you. It was a successful season in finishing third in the Premiership, but how do you look back at that, considering the amount of draws?
I think for me, probably never even took that into consideration.
Right.
Coming where I was to winning the Championship the season before to finishing third, probably not, I don't think I even realised we'd only lost 3 more games than Celtic that season. But I think we had a really good defensive record, and I was part of that. And we'd had some really great wins. I think after the split, we maybe won 4 out of 5 of the games as well. So we ended on a real high. I think it was a great season for us. If we could have turned a couple of their draws into wins, what might have happened. But to finish third was a great achievement for the club, and everybody was delighted. So I don't think for any second they're like, we should have been second.
And at that time, Rangers weren't in the Premiership at that. How much of an impact did it make on you as a player? Personally, on a personal level, I think you would have liked to have been playing at Ibrox.
Yep.
But did you feel like it kind of evened the playing field in terms of being able to finish third?
Yeah, it definitely gave other teams a chance to get up there. All of a sudden you're fighting for second. Maybe not us, but I mean, your Hibs, Hearts, Aberdeens or whatever, they're fighting for a spot even further up. So, it was just a spot further up to fight for. I think we were really lucky these seasons as well, because I think the European spots went down to even 4th place, maybe even 5th, depending on who won the cups and stuff. So no, there was a lot to fight for.
And as you mentioned about European spots, the following season saw you make a trip to Rosenborg, and you actually came away with a positive result in that one.
Yeah, it was again another amazing achievement. Growing up as a youngster, you're watching the Champions League. Rosenborg's a team that's always in the Champions League, and then you come up against them in the Europa League, UEFA Cup. It was growing up, but to go away to their stadium was brilliant. What a stadium it was. Fraser Wright scored a header, we won 1-0, and I think Gaz McDonald hit the post with an overhead kick, something like that as well. So another great player that came into the team and just added to the quality. He was make these bombing forward runs for midfield and stuff, a guy that I got on really well with, and I thought, this guy is on it. And then that day I think hit the post or something with an overhead kick, and we won. And again you're like, wow, this is amazing.
In the return leg at McDermott, it was a 1-1 draw as well, and even at that, I mean, that's a good result. As you said, it's a team that's you're forever seeing it mentioned within European football. So even though it was a draw, you progressed to the next round. You must have been buzzing with that.
Yeah, and I remember I came on and again you've got to take it up at even further a level. You're up against these guys in the Europa League, so the error margin is even more limited. You've got to be spot on, you've got to have your positions right, it becomes a lot more tactical and strategic, and you've got to be in the right positions and stuff like that. So I think as a team we deserved that. I remember them being a wee bit acting like we weren't a good team, and we clearly were. Might not have had the quality at times that they had, but one thing we were was a really good team. So no, it was brilliant to beat them.
Did you notice a difference in terms of Scottish clubs play their European qualifiers early on in the season, but Scandinavian teams like Norway, Sweden, they're already during their campaign?
Yeah.
Can you notice the difference when you're up
I think you
against
can,
them?
yeah. I remember they were all sharp, they were always ready to go, their sprints were quick, and I don't know if that's how they trained, but we were kind of, I don't want to say we were getting up to speed because we would start back earlier to be prepared for it, but like you say, there was definitely an element, well, they seemed really fit, sharp and ready, and obviously it's the middle of their season, so.
And then progressing through to the next round, you would make a trip to Belarus to play Minsk. How was that trip? I don't think many people have Belarus on their travel log of where they want to go.
Well, in Europe, when you land, usually you get like a police escort, and you get the bus from the stadium for the airport to where you're staying and stuff. So I remember we got off, and there was these soldiers, might have been the military police or the police, they had Kalashnikovs, escorted us about, took us to the hotel, and then they were standing outside the hotel and stuff. And I think, excuse me,
Alright.
I think we were travelling, and there was a roundabout, and there was like a statue, a big tank on the roundabout. You know, and you're like,
Just surreal.
you know, so
Bizarre.
you've seen a Kalashnikov, you've seen a tank, stuff like that.
It's a completely different way of living. But you left with a 1-0 victory. The return leg saw Minsk win 1-0, and then it went to penalties, and that was a European exit on penalties. But St Johnstone finished 6th in the Premiership that season, and it's another Scottish Cup run. And there was no need for replays this time, and it was a clean run to the semi-final, defeating your old side Livingston 2-0 at McDermott for Athletic, who you scored your first goal against in a 4-0 win away from home, and then Raith Rovers 3-1 at Starks Park, and that set up for a semi-final showdown against Aberdeen at Ibrox due to the Commonwealth Games. How was that?
Brilliant. It was really good. I think Aberdeen were well supported, stuff like that, so it's just a lot of these performances and stuff, they just, during the season it feels like it just flies in, you know, but as you said, disappointed with the European exit, 'cause I think Rosenborg were a much better team than the team that actually beat us. Probably a bit disappointed with that, but no, we achieved a lot of great stuff in that team. So.
And then you would obviously beat Aberdeen in the semi-final, winning 2-1.
I think that was a late
Stevie
winner, was
May.
it? Stevie May
Got the late goal, and that secured the spot in the Scottish Cup final that would be held at Celtic Park.
Yep.
Because of the Commonwealth Games. How was that as a player going to Celtic Park, being a Rangers supporter, to compete in the Scottish Cup final? Did it have any impact?
Not really.
No.
We see when you become a player and the more you play against these teams, it just filters it.
Just becomes less of a factor.
Yeah, exactly. So it didn't matter where it was, but we had a really strong squad, a strong group, and I think one of the benefits for us that I think we'd played Dundee United a couple of times that season and beat them already, so we were high on confidence, flying, that we had the ability to go and beat them.
With it being Dundee United in the final, who was the last team you played in the final, did you have a feeling that I want to get one out of them here?
Yeah, it definitely felt a bit, you know, like, right, this is going to be the time I'm going to win it and get the proper medal, so yeah, I was delighted with that.
Your family there, I take it?
Yeah, my parents were there again, so my son was there as well, so no, it was amazing.
And is that the thing that you probably look back at the most, is that what your memories are, is looking up and seeing your family sitting there? Like,
yeah.
Is that the thing
I think
that's
that's the most
to you?
important for everybody that's involved. It's the memories that you look back on and the teams you've shared it with, your teammates and your family. You know, as soon as the whistle goes, the result's obviously important, but as soon as the whistle goes, it's everything else that you remember. You know what I mean? You don't really, unless you've scored, you think back and you go, I scored that, but a lot of people will probably think back, oh, I remember my family were this happy, or these people were really excited, or my teammates and we did this together, stuff like that. So for me, my whole family was there. My brothers were there, and I think I remember there was a bit on Sky. I went up and I gave my medal to my dad, and they had it on, and my wee dad was all upset. And it was brilliant. These moments are the ones that mean the most to you.
And it's to have something like that documented as well is pretty special. But St Johnstone scored either side of half time. But Dundee United were well in that game as well.
Very strong team.
Like, they hit the woodwork either side of half time as well. So they were.
I think they hit the post. And Alan Manus, great goalkeeper, as you said, was Ander Clark. What a guy to learn from. Big Al was a great guy, great goalkeeper. I think it hit the post and he fell on it. Or like the ball should have hit him and went in. And for some reason that day it never. He caught it and landed on it. Amazing save for him. But I think that was when you're like, right, we've got a chance here, because they piled on the pressure, they did this, and then Ando comes up, scores a header, brilliant, and we go in at half time and they're probably thinking, like, I think they might have had the better of the first half, and they're probably in at half time thinking, how are they beating us?
And I'm sure Chiefty hit a free kick and it hit off the bar as well.
Yep.
Like, so they were really trying to get that goal to get back into the game.
Yeah.
But being part of a club, that's a monumental part of their history. That was the first trophy they had ever won in 130 years.
Yeah.
How is that? How is it being part of something like that?
Incredible. I think we went out all night. I don't even remember most of that, and then we had the open top bus the next day. So stuff like that to achieve, and those are the things that you remember. But obviously Maka scores the winner, the second goal, and then he was manager for a spell there as well, so it meant a lot to everybody. But like you said, the reactions and the atmosphere when that second goal goes in, you're kind of like, this is it. And as a team, we deserved it. That was a really good team that season, and the thing about us was, we might not have had the qualities that other teams might have had, but we certainly had a lot of quality. And there was just a real togetherness. I think both the teams that I've been part of like that, with Ross County and that, there was a real bond that helped the team sort of never give up.
The following season saw you lose some key players, and I think Stevie May would probably be the most notable one for that, because he went to Sheffield Wednesday. And there was a few early cup exits in that season as well. What was the hangover? Like, can you pinpoint any? Why that would be?
I think with any successful teams, the expectation only goes up, and other teams are looking at your team and they want the good players, the best players for your team, so if you lose somebody like Stevie May, that's a lot of goals to replace. So for us, and a team like St Johnstone, you can't just go out and buy 20, 30 goals a season, so you've got to shop in the market that you're in. So for us, it's going to take a bit of change, and somebody come in needs time to bed in and alter, and that's part of football. And I think you've seen that recently when St Johnstone won their trophies. The spell after that was a bit they had to regenerate and alter, and everything's it probably becomes more heightened and more difficult the seasons after to get what you can do before. So I think you have to take that. I mean, the expectation level goes through the roof, but you have to be a bit realistic.
The 15-16 season saw you make a move to Partick Thistle.
Yep.
Was that a case of moving closer to home once again?
It was a team that I'd always known growing up and stuff. I think I had a spell in my youth days there, maybe at like 12. But no, it was a move that I'd always sort of hoped for, growing up in Glasgow, probably third biggest club or whatever. But it was local, and they had a really good squad. They'd won the championship maybe a season or two before, and I knew of players there for playing against them in cups and that, and I knew they had a good team. Yeah,
some of the players that you're touching upon, like Thomas Cherney in goal, Stuart Bannigan, Chris Doolan, who's the current manager there, Jack Hendry was coming up, Kevin Nesbitt as well, and World Cup winner Paul Pogba's brother.
Yep.
So Mateus, how is he to be around? Because I'll look at him and I think he thinks he is it, purely because of the brother situation.
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much, to be honest. He was massive in stature, he was a big guy on the pitch and stuff. But played some games you never, don't think we really seen the best of him, but it's what it is.
Was he a character though? How was he?
He wasn't shy, but he seemed a decent guy, got on well with him, so no, there's nothing that I would say was any different. He was just used to probably being a bit more in the limelight to the rest of us.
And it was only one season at Partick Thistle, and you've made one drastic move going up north to one drastic move moving south.
Further south.
Where you've travelled 486 miles to join your former teammate and manager Derek Adams.
Yep.
How did that move come about, and why was it the right one to move to Plymouth Argyle?
So I pretty much agreed a new 2-year contract with Partick Thistle, and then there was a few things that went on, and I was like, right, not happy with that. So I decided to leave, and I think I was in Las Vegas, and Derek phoned me, and he's like, I've heard about your situation, will you come? And it's like, aye, that's it. So pretty much agreed within 10 minutes. I think they'd just missed out on the playoffs, and I think it was like the day or two after. So that was it pretty much. I mean, obviously there'd been the odd conversations before that with teams to, when you're running down your contract or you're at a contract, teams maybe suss out the situations and let us know what's happening. So that was it. He phoned me, agreed, and that was it. I went back to lying on my sun lounger.
How was it relocating to Plymouth? Was it an upheaval or?
Probably a lot easier because I'd done it previously.
Right.
So it was just another part of the job as such. You know what I mean? You're moving away, packed the car up, drove down. Obviously, the club meet you, find you a flat within a month. You've got your own place, stuff like that. But again, you're at the opposite end of the earth, and your family have got to do all the travelling again and stuff like that. So felt bad for them, but you know they've got to see some great parts of the country for that as well.
And I think there's only one place to start on that 16-17 season, and it would be the FA Cup. A 2-1 win away to Mansfield in the first round was followed by a 1-0 second round replay win over Newport County, setting up for an away day to Liverpool in the third round. You've been part of 2 Scottish Cup finals, but how special was it going to play at Anfield?
It was an unbelievable day, you know what I mean? You're walking out there, they're singing their anthem. You know, for what I can remember, it was pretty much full. Jurgen Klopp was there. It was so many amazing factors for me personally. You know, I remember we were warming up, and I don't know if people have noticed, but Klopp stands on the halfway line and just stares at your team warming up. Doesn't he watch his own team? So we're warming up, and you're like, he's still looking at us. A couple of minutes, he's still standing looking at us. So even stuff like that, as you try to psych us out, but you know, you go there. I remember some of the players they had, Emre Can, stuff like that, brilliant. So I think I was up against Moreno that day, and they bring on some other great talent as well. So I think we were one of the only teams that kept a clean sheet that season at Anfield as well.
It's quite an achievement in itself. There was 9,000 away supporters that day, so you pretty much packed out that entire stand behind the goal.
Yeah. And
you got a standing ovation
Yeah.
from Anfield leaving the pitch. And do you remember any of it? How bad was that injury?
So it was something that I did previously. I'd landed on somebody's boot, my ankle touched the floor while my foot was still raised, and not a great feeling. But yeah, I remember my parents and my son were in the crowd at that game, so hopefully a great memory for him. But yeah, I got stretchered off, went up for a challenge with Divock Origi, landed again, spun my ankle, could feel a lump, pain was excruciating, and the medics and stuff ran on, and the guy was like, "Are you okay? What's the pain?" I was like, "I need to, I'm done, that's..." It's like, "Here,
take this.
You just have that." I was like, brilliant. By the time I got in the changing room, I couldn't feel any pain. It was probably high on life at the minute, but nah. My parents and that told me I got a standing ovation. I think I got a lovely message on Twitter or X from Liverpool as well to make sure I was fine. So another thing where you're just like, wow. And then we managed to get a draw and take them back to Plymouth.
And even in the replay as well, it was only a 1-0 defeat. Like, you made it extremely difficult for them.
Yeah.
And that's quite an achievement in itself. That must be something that the club was feeling good about. The fact that you held Liverpool to a 0-0 draw at Anfield, and then only losing 1-0.
I think the club made a good bit of money from that as well, so that's as important as anything, having the two games. But it was only a 1-0 win, and they came down with a much stronger side the second time than they did the first, probably to make sure they went through. So probably a huge credit to us. But I remember in the tunnel before the game, I had my boot on. I was on BT Sport talking with Neil Warnock, Steven Gerrard, Jake Humphries, and I seen Klopp in the tunnel, and he was like, wow, I can't believe you're up and walking about, and gave me a big cuddle and stuff. I was desperate to ask for a picture, but I was like, can't really do that. Yeah. But he gave us a hug and whatever else, and I stood and spoke to him for a couple of minutes. So even moments like that, you're like, this guy's like one of the best managers there is. So it's a real moment.
Brilliant. And then the league campaign, is it bittersweet looking back at the league campaign? Plymouth Argyle and Portsmouth both ended on 87 points.
Yep.
And it was down to the final day. Plymouth needed a win to secure it, and ended up with a draw at Grimsby. How is it looking back at that? Obviously you're wanting to celebrate promotion, but losing the league on the final day.
So we still got a promotion trophy, we still got medals, we still got everything. So it was a promotion.
Right.
The task that I was taken down there for, the task that I think Derek had that season, was to win promotion. So everything had been achieved.
Right, okay.
So of course we would have loved to win the league, but we finished joint on points. So it was frustrating, but the manager made sure at the end of the game, don't be disappointed. We've won promotion, we're moving up the league. It's an amazing achievement. This is what, when you have your chats at the start of the season, and he was like, this is a goal. We got playoffs last year. We need to go up. We're aiming to get promoted, and we'd achieved that. So maybe the frustration is you always want something a wee bit better, but we would achieved what we'd aimed to achieve.
And I think, especially with the length of the seasons in the lower leagues of England, I mean, it's 46 games, and to achieve automatic promotion without the extra games of the playoff, you're right, it is an achievement. But talking about the length of the seasons, and you often hear the Scottish League's a farmers' league and all of that. How would you compare the quality of the lower leagues? Because we often hear that Scottish teams won't compete. They can't compete in England no matter what level.
I mean, I think the main difference is money. The money in England throughout the TV deals and whatever that's hard to compete with. You go to some teams. When we were in League One, you're going to MK Dons, it's like 40,000 seat stadium, stuff like that. So how can any other teams outwit our Prem deal with that? So you're going to Wigan, places like that. I think we played Reading in the Cup. A lot of these teams, money at our level is no object for them. They can go and afford to spend a couple of million. It's not an issue for them. So I think that is a factor. As for the quality and stuff, lots of players for Scotland now are going doing well. Half of the Scotland national team, if not more than that, are playing in England. So as for the quality aspect, I think it's been growing all the time. There's boys down there playing a lot now, making their own way and doing really well. So if you gave Scotland $1 billion in money, how would the quality be? It'd be totally different. So
it's a debate that could probably happen as long as your arm. Like, especially, I feel like Scotland doesn't really retain the players that are within it as well.
Yep.
And even with youngsters, I feel like they don't really get the chance as well. They're usually snapped up by either side of the old firm, and then they sit on the bench. And one of the examples I look at, the more recent examples would be how good David Turnbull was at Motherwell.
Yep.
And then he went to Celtic and he's just sat on the bench, and he gets the odd appearance, and now he's in his last year of his contract, and you don't know what's going to be happening to a player like that.
Yeah.
Moving forward.
The coaching side of me is, it's these factors are huge. Stepping from Motherwell to Celtic, there's so much more on your plate. You've got to win every game. You've got to develop. You've got to be fighting against new players that come in. You've got to be up against the competition. You've got to be better than what's selected, stuff like that. So there's loads of factors that come into. I think it's probably about developing the team. He's got to develop himself and continue. So totally agree. It's hard, but you look at Lewis Ferguson's away playing in Italy, doing brilliant. So a lot more players are branching out. They're maybe not choosing the old firm quite as much as they used to. John McGinn never. Look at him now, he's flying as well. Probably one of the better Scottish players in England. So
And I suppose it could be, you could look at it like we had mentioned earlier on about your butterfly effect. What if you played for Kilmarnock that day as opposed to Livingston?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it's ifs, buts and maybes in terms of some of these moves. And in the lower leagues of England, you only play each other twice, home and away.
Brilliant.
So you're all for that as opposed to the four meetings that you get within a season?
Yep. It's, you're going away one place, you've got the trip, you enjoy it. I'm not saying it makes you try any harder, but there's definitely an element of this is our only away game against them and stuff like that. So it's got a different factor, a different value to it. I do think during the COVID period, I think we should have altered the leagues, made them a bit bigger, less games. And again, that comes down to money, I guess, doesn't it? But I would have maybe went and made a 16-team Prem and filtered the teams in underneath that and tried to change it up a wee bit.
And when you just need to look at the leagues that are around Europe, the main leagues, and they are all of a size where they only play each other twice. So it's definitely, as you said, it's a discussion you could have for the entirety of the whole time.
Yeah.
But moving on, you made a move up to Carlisle United after your second and last season at Plymouth.
Same travelling, opposite end.
I don't know. So, what was the reason behind that move? Considering you're like a pigeon. You're heading back home again.
No, really enjoyed my times playing in England. I think that season with Plymouth we'd finished 7th, missed the playoffs by a couple of points. So again, another great achievement that we were probably disappointed not to make it. But our first season in, you're thinking we're having a go here. So no, and then I'd been contacted by Carlisle to make a move. Accepted it, moved closer to home again. My son was getting a bit older. Back to see him, back to see the family, and that was it.
So that was the driving factor.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then, so Carlisle finished 11th in League 2 that season with 68 points. And looking back at that one and only season in Carlisle, good memories, enjoy it?
Yeah, no, again, we had a really good squad, some really good players. Played with Danny Granger, ended up linking up with him again at Falkirk. Danny's a really good guy, doing well at his coaching and management now as well. So met some other good players. Again, I think we had around about Christmas we were in the top 4, doing really well. But there is teams down there that in January they either filter in some better players or teams kick on after that. And as you said, it's difficult. It's away game, home game, and you push on. So some teams probably dealt with it a bit better than what we did. I think we were in and about it, and then sort of fell away at the business end.
Your one and only season at Carlisle United, then seeing you make the move to Falkirk, which you've just mentioned, was that just another case of let me get home? Yeah,
that was it. It was time to come back and enjoy my time with the family and be back home.
How was Falkirk when you first joined?
Joined, and again with a really good squad, really big squad for that league. Ray McGinnon was in charge, and we were doing quite well.
COVID had an impact in terms of the season getting shut early and even delayed the following season. How was COVID for you? I feel like everybody kind of dwells on it, but again, butterfly effect. Had it been a year or two of a difference, you would have been stuck in Plymouth.
Yeah.
So like the timing of it.
In football terms, it was difficult because at that time we had new managers. We had Lee Miller and David McCracken. They'd come in and they were brilliant. And I'd played every game for them. We were on a bit of a charge. I think we'd drawn Wraith Rovers a couple of weeks or a week before, and we were a point behind. So that was a frustrating part for us. At the time with everything that was going on, shutting down football was only sensible, really. You know what I mean? So not here to argue with that, but just for our frustration is we were doing really well at that time. With Declan McManus up front, who was, I think he finished scoring 25 to 29 goals that season. So doing really well, and just frustrating that we couldn't continue that as a team and come on strong. You
mentioned co-managers. How is it working under that dynamic? It's not often you see co-managers within football.
Really enjoyed it. The two of them had lots of good information. They coached really well, especially that first season up until the COVID thing. We were doing brilliant. We had a really strong team, we had a strong spirit. Don't think we'd lost many games, so they came on strong and they done brilliant.
And you were appointed captain as well. Yep. Was that a big deal for you?
Yeah, obviously, you're chosen to be the team's captain, to be their captain, and that second season, I think we had a really good season up until the end. I think both guys done brilliant, two really good guys as well. And I think how it ended was, a bit unsure for everybody. Like, different people came in, director of football, stuff like that. So I think it just caused a bit of confusion that ended up with them leaving when we were top of the league. Maybe unjustified stuff like that. So it felt really harsh for them, and it was just something that happened. Gary Holt came in as director of football. Don't think any of it was to do with him, what happened to them, but I don't know. Gary was a good guy. I got on alright with Gary, so there was just like a wee vacuum. But I think there was new investors coming into the club and
something underlying.
Quite
somewhere.
Unsure, considering we were 8 points clear or something at the time. So strange.
Yeah, and then after your time at Falkirk, this is where our paths crossed. We at East Kilbride.
Yep.
How did the move to East Kilbride happen, considering you were jumping down 2 tiers within the Scottish Pyramid?
Again, I'd been involved in the coaching side. I was starting to move on to what my next sort of steps were, and maybe stepping back for football. And Kevin phoned me, spoke to me about what was happening, spoke to me about the deal, spoke to me about his plans, and I thought, nah, this sounds brilliant. I knew a few other players that were going to be coming as well, and I knew Neil McLaughlin for previous being at Partick Thistle together. I knew Bob McHugh and stuff like that, so I had an awareness of people I was going to be around.
And you mentioning the likes of Neil McLaughlin, Bob McHugh, that squad on paper, I think everybody was guilty of thinking we can win this week.
Yep.
Like, I think everybody had an element of that guilt. What do you think went wrong? Because EK finished 6th that season, and it was a pretty disappointing season for everybody that was involved in it.
Yep.
How would you reflect on that?
I think we're all disappointed. The manager will be disappointed. He's put together a team that he probably knows should have done better than what we did. So it's probably frustrating for him. It's frustrating for us, because you're thinking, how have we not done better? I mean, we started brilliant. I think we
won 7 of the first 8.
Yeah, 7 of the first 8. So there was obviously something that was going right. So it's just frustrating for us, and you look back and think, what could have been or whatever. But at the end of the day, we never done it. You know, so it's probably a frustrating thing to look back on. But like you said, with the quality we've got with Ronan Hughes, you get Neil McLaughlin. I mean, Neil's brilliant. It's left foot, right foot, headers, whatever he wants to do, he can do it. And then up top, you've got Bob McHugh. So Bob's brilliant with both feet, back to goal. scores all sorts of goals, great movement, really good striker. Bob's a great guy as well. And then we also had big Cammy Elliott, so
who ended up moving to Dundalk in Ireland.
Exactly, he's a really good guy, Cammy, and he deserved a crack. He'd always spoke to me about like being full time and how he was at St Mirren when he was younger and stuff, and just thought this guy deserves a chance. He'd done really well, and he managed to, they took him out there, and he's just signed a new contract extension. And brilliant. Played a few games in Europe as well, so not fully deserved for his effort and the type of player that Cammy is. And I think when Cammy left, we'd hit a rough patch already anyway, so he took his chance, and that's how that came about.
And we've spoke about the structure of the leagues. The Lowland League is notoriously difficult to get out of, considering you need to play the winner of the Highland League and then a further playoff against the bottom team of the 42. But unfortunately it just wasn't to be at that time. EK look like they're flying just now, but there was a total clean sweep at the end of that season. Martin Fellows, who we now work with at St Cadoc's, was the interim boss and seemed to pick things up. He won the Lowland League Cup. How was it working under him, considering that was his first manager role within a first team? He was obviously looking after all the youth setup at East Kilbride, but this was his first, the man in charge. How was he working?
Brilliant. He just came in and he said, listen, he came in with a bit of freedom, and he was like, fresh approach for everybody. This is how I want you to play. Don't care whatever else happens. I want you to try and play this way. He gave us the creative freedom on the pitch to go out and sort of do what our skill set was and build on that, and he just implemented his tactics and what he expected round about that, and you were given the freedom in amongst his style to go and achieve, and I think we did that really well. A couple of games in, and then we'd started to pick it up really well, and I think him at the side letting the team play and letting us take control and helping us a bit was really good.
And I think he's got an Amazon Prime story written all over him, starting as a kit man when he was 16 years old, being at EK for 10 years, working within Scotland now under Billy Stark, and now manager of St Cadoc's in the West of Scotland Premier Division. Out of the 22-man squad, I think 21 were let go. Dylan McDonald was the only survivor of that EK exodus. How easy a decision was it to follow Martin to St Cadoc's?
Very easy. Bob came, Neely came, Ronan came, Max came, Big Al Lithgow came, so real quality came with a quality manager. You've got Mark McKenna, brilliant guy, knows he's so pinpoint on his stuff with the analysis, but Andy's coaching as well. Craig Malcolm came back, really good coach. And then you've got Mikey King, sports scientist. You've got Sam, so you've got Big Mick.
Dr. Mikey King.
Dr.
Mikey King.
So you've got a real ethos and quality behind the scenes, and they wanted to bring what they thought was the quality on the pitch, and loads of the boys managed to come.
I think, well, me personally, I always thought that Martin,
including yourself.
I know there's a few tag-alongs. Me and Adam, we're just loose ends there. But looking at Martin Fellows, me personally, I thought he was worth a punt at EK. To have that homegrown guy, I thought, for a club that were kind of known for changing the manager and the squad every year in hopes of reaching that Club 42, he was the free hit. I think everybody would have been behind him, and I think it's a testament to his character that near enough the majority of that squad were willing to follow him in his first role as a club manager. So a lot of credit goes to him. But you're at St Cadoc's as a player coach. Talk to us a wee bit about how your playing career is, I don't want to say winding down, but you are starting to look ahead to the coaching side of things, is that right?
No, like you said, a lot of the reasons I decided to take that on was to watch Martin, to learn from his experience, his different approaches, and Mark's as well. So, two really on-the-ball guys who've got a lot of knowledge. They're involved with Scotland. So for me, it was a no-brainer. Can learn from them, can help them, add bits that I've got and stuff like that. So for me, easy choice. And you've got two guys who are rising up the game. Lots of knowledge, lots of experience. You know, Marky's away with Scotland, creating some unbelievable
Off
stuff
to
with
Germany.
Scotland. You know,
Like, he's actually part of the first team set up. Like,
so for him coming back and watching, helping us and adding on that experience, it's brilliant to learn from. You know what I mean? Where else are you going to get stuff like that?
and are you doing any other coaching roles at the moment?
Yes, I'm involved with Partick Thistle's 18s Academy, so I'm coaching in there. Really good setup again. Craig Dargo's head of Academy. Mark Wilson is manager of 18s, and I'm in there with him. And Stuart Bannigan, player I've played against many times, he's in with us as well. So great ethos, a great group, learning for some really good guys again. Mark's obviously been a manager before, and now he's back involved at this level, but so far his information, how he carries himself and stuff is brilliant. So even more experience for me to learn from. Stuart obviously adds his bits in and brings his intensity and what he brings for his side of the game, and then you've got Craig Dargo above that, sort of leading and adding his experience. He's been coaching at head of academy stage, and he's been at Ayr United, and he's got a lot of information to pass down as well. So really good. And then you've obviously got Dools, who was in my role, or in the 18s role, and then he's stepped up. So really good for him. He's done brilliant as well. I think with the playoff charge they had and stuff, really unlucky, but you know, for a first season, wow.
Mm-hmm. Being part of coaching, is management something that you would be looking into doing, or is...
Maybe not at the minute, but in the future, yeah. I'm enjoying the coaching side. I'm enjoying learning the different tactics, the different strategies, watching the drills that people set up, just taking in as much information as I can on the management side and the coaching side and learning. But I'd like to think in the future, next few years, I'll maybe try myself as a manager.
And we'll finish up with some quick fire. If you get a most memorable moment, I'm assuming you've got a few to pick from, but is there any that just goes, that's the moment for me?
My family more so have always got a moment in the Celtic game. Slid across and blocked a shot for Samaras onto the post. Big Mick McGovern probably had it covered anyway, but
you need to take credit somewhere.
Definitely. So just for a wee moment for me, I think that was a wee moment where they were like, oh, brilliant, well done. So that listen, ticking off achievements when you're young, you know, playing in Europa League, playing against teams like Rosenborg, playing in other games, winning Scottish Cup. So for me, just there's so many things that I've ticked that when you start out as a 16, 17-year-old, you think, oh, imagine if I could do that. So it's probably something I don't dwell on too much just now, but when I look back, when I have eventually retired, I'll probably be like, they were not too bad.
Who is the best player that you've played with and against?
Played. It's hard. People ask me this, but I think you've asked me before. There's probably a few. When I was really young, played with some really quality players at like Livingston, whatever. But the two guys that stand out is probably Michael Halloran. When I was at St Johnstone, was on fire, like a quicker guy you couldn't find, and he hit a real purple patch there. Obviously got his move, but he was on fire. And probably another guy at St Johnstone now, Graham Carey. When I was at Plymouth, you know, we did so well that season, and Graham would get the ball 30 yards out, turn around and put it in the top corner, even if we weren't having a good game. So people like that you think, it's just brilliant that they're capable of doing that. And that season Graham did that for us and would pull us out a wee hole whenever we needed. But that's the quality in terms down there as well that clubs like that can afford. So, you know, as of somebody that sticks out, probably for different reasons, like the manager of Motherwell just now, Stuart Kettlewell. I loved playing with Stuart. He was a great guy, but what a competitor on the pitch. You know, he had an authority, he had an intensity, and he just brought so much to our team at that time. You know, he was one of these guys that was never going to give up, and it brought the rest through. He had a lot of quality on the ball as well, you know, so probably at times some of the players in that Ross County team, some of the stuff that they did, Michael Gardine, score with left foot, right foot, take a corner with his right, run across the other side, take one with his left, stuff that you're just like, who does that? But it's brilliant, you know what I mean? So no, it was really pleasing for me that I've played with a lot of good players through my career. Obviously playing with Graham Dorns, playing with Robert Snodgrass when I was younger in the first teams and that, great guys that you could just see were going to go on and do really well.
And against?
Playing against your Celtic players, Chris Commons was lightning over 10 yards for somebody that at times in his career wasn't deemed the fittest, but what a player. Probably Samaras maybe, that game I always ended up against him and he was lightning quick with it, looking like he was even trying to run fast, stuff like that. Robbie Keane, guys like them, so there's probably even more than I can remember, but the fact that you're on and sort of achieving against these guys is brilliant for me.
And beating them?
Well, some of them, no, all the time.
Aye, but the ones that mattered, Have you got a favourite manager that you worked under?
I really liked working under Steve Lomas. I thought he was brilliant. He got on really well with me for the start. Jimmy Calderwood, again, got on really well with me at the start. You always like managers that like you, and he had a great rapport with me and stuff like that. And obviously Derek, Derek and Craig Brewster for me were brilliant. Worked with them for about 7 years, so I think that they're the two that probably I've worked with the most.
Yeah.
But even for a short spell at Carlisle, I had Stephen Presley, who was brilliant. Came in, really liked me for the start, and just guys that have done well in their career, and things like that. So it's just I've been fortunate to have a good few.
In the best ground that you played at?
Best ground?
You've got a good few to pick for.
You probably Celtic Park, Ibrox, but one of the most surreal ones was we went and played a team in Switzerland, Lucerne, and they had this like big gold-plated stadium on the outside. I think it was like 30 degrees for the game. Pitch was immaculate, well soaked, and I think it was because it was around about the time of the Euros.
Right.
Was it Austria and Switzerland?
Aye.
So they had this big fancy stadium, and I just thought, wow, that's brilliant. But MK Dons Stadium is brilliant, stuff like that. So down in England, a lot of them are brilliant, but up here, nothing probably touches Ibrox and Celtic Park.
And do you have any regrets on anything, in how your career's panned out, or things that, if only, have you got any moments where it's...
I don't really have too many regrets through my career. There's maybe only one. It's not even a regret, but when I was at St Johnstone the season before I left, I think there was a few chances for me to go on loan to Hibs during the transfer window in January.
Right.
Just on loan, so it would have been a great achievement for me, for my family members that were Hibs fans, but I think they were in the league below and whatever else, so it would have just been a great achievement for me to do something for the memory of my family. To play for Hibs, you know what I mean? A massive team, and Liam Craig had went there, and I knew Liam and a few other guys, and to go, I think Tommy had spoke to me a few times that they were in to try and get me on loan, and nothing came of it, and that's what it was. So it's not even
just a what if.
Just a wee what if that would have been good to achieve, that's all.
And last question, we're looking to show a wee bit of gratitude. What are the 3 things that you are grateful for in your life right now?
Probably my family, like you said. We've just discussed the whole career that wouldn't have been capable without them helping me through it. So the gratitude has to go to them, and they're travelling and driving cars everywhere and flying away at times, and my brothers as well for kicking about me when I was a wee guy, and toughening you up and letting you play football with them and stuff. So probably first and foremost my family is most important for a lot of people, but just pleased to have had a really successful career that I feel that I've had, and obviously we've sat and discussed it, so lots of gratitude for yourself and what you've achieved, and probably a bit of gratitude for myself and the sacrifices you have to make, 500 miles to the south of England, then back to the north, then to the north of Scotland at 18, and a lot of people don't realise sometimes what it takes to give up or miss out on. You miss out on a lot of family stuff, you miss out on a lot of parties, and I know people say, but you're getting the benefit. Of course you are, but
you're still missing out.
Everybody wants to be everywhere, so no, there's a lot to be thankful for that I've achieved and had a decent career.
Well, I think that's everything. I apologise that this has turned into a knock-off version of This Is Your Life, but thank you very much for joining me, Gary.
No, thanks a lot for having me.
And a special thanks once again to MacSorley's for welcoming us into their space to bring you this episode. MacSorley's are situated on Jamaica Street in Glasgow city centre and in prime location for any gig-goers heading to the Hydro or the O2 Academy. The kitchen is open from 12 to 9 every day, having a wide selection of food aimed for the music lover. You can catch free live music on the stage 6 days a week, Tuesday to Sunday, making it the perfect place to enjoy a pre-gig drink. MacSorley's, good food, good music and great vibes. Thank you very much for joining me, and until next time.